going to go on a little bit of a side quest while I wait for a slow boat from Japan to bring components. These are very old rollers for a cabinet that my son has, a lawyer's book cabinet that was made in the late 1800s, 1880 to 1890s. It's pretty easy to tell when they were made. As you can see, they're also very old and falling apart. But they're a little fatter than they should be. Let me turn this on. We'll set this to 3/8 of an inch. It's hard to do upside down. You do it the right way. As you can see, this is 3/8 of an inch. And these are not. They're just a little too fat. Just a little too fat to pass through 3/8 of an inch. In fact, there's some weird fraction. That's not because these are made poorly. It's because the unit of measure doesn't exist anymore. We'll talk about that in a second. First off, these are really cool. This is early vulcanized rubber. It's seen better days, as you can tell. The inner wheel is bronze. These seem to be iron, probably ductile iron before they were treated, and then soft iron rivets. Like, this is a level of craftsmanship we really don't have anymore, so this is a fun project. I'm going to restore all of these and put new tires on them, and they'll be a little softer than 120-year-old, or I guess 100 and almost 40-year-old vulcanized rubber. But these are, as you can see, they've seen better days. Now, as to why they seem fat. They're fat because we don't use the same measure. They were made very, very, very precisely according to the fractional measures from their time frame. It's kind of a rabbit hole. We should probably go down that. We've been using metric in the U.S., contrary to what most Europeans think. We've been using metric in the U.S. legally since the Metric Act of 1866, and that allowed the legal use of metric for contracts and manufacturing and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff. Prior to that, like 1850 to about 1893, we actually used a physical rod, a bar. It's actually a bronze bar called Bronze Yard Number 11, and it was copied from the British Imperial Yard, and we used that for the time period when this was made. We had later, so in 1866, it became legal, and then like in 1875, the U.S. joined the Metric Convention, and then we received the first metric prototype in 1890, so about the same time these were made, we were getting the very first prototype. And that meant metric wasn't really a thing. It was being adopted. People were writing books. In fact, I'm going to link a book, Joshua Rose, The Complete Practical Machinist, 15th edition. It was printed in Philadelphia in 1887. And you can look on page 102, there's a typo, which I think is kind of funny, or really a failure to understand metric. You'll find it if you look there. But Mr. Rose was trying to explain, hey, if you take, he was talking about in that section about making threads, metric threads, using the US system. And for 1800s precision, it was sufficient to say that 254 over 100 was a good conversion ratio for the inch. And that allowed sufficient work to be done. And that was then. We had the Mendenhall order in 1893, so after we got the metric prototype, and that made the US measurements metric based. And that's really weird because in 1893, that's a long time ago, we, 110 years or so, we started basing everything on the metric system, but it wasn't super. A yard was defined as 3,600 over 397 of a meter. In other words, by fractions. People were not scared of fractions back then. Fractions ruled the world. They were quite good. If you had a yard and you had a gauge block, a 1-inch gauge block in your shop, you could pretty much make fractions easily and mechanically. Remember, we're talking more than a century ago. If you move forward a little bit, President Eisenhower kind of changed that from that ugly fraction, which did not convert super well. And he allowed the inch to be defined as 2.54 centimeters. So like the US customary standard measurement of an inch was suddenly defined as 2.54 centimeters exactly. Prior to that, it was like, if you worked out the math, it was 2.54.0005, I think. But before Mendenhall, we used a physical bronze bar that was copied from the British Imperial Yard in Great Britain. Well, if you took a fraction of a copy of a physical thing and then you made a very precise thing, which was actually way more precision than we would have today. If you look at your average aluminum plastic monstrosity on the bottom of your screen doors or maybe a drawer slide, you'll see that these are pretty darn good. They've lasted a very long time. They deserve to be restored. That's really all there is to this. This is going to be a fun little side quest. And I'll show you the finished product. These are kind of rusty. They need to be treated a little bit. And I don't know, I think you're going to like the results. More in a minute. Well, that turned out better than I expected. Very fast, very fun. As you can see, rivets are there, wheels are there. They spin freely now. A little blue tape, I don't know if you can see that. But they are massively better. I wish we still made things like this in the United States. We do not. Maybe someday soon. I don't know. For now, all we can do is restore the things we find. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.